need to set these things back far away from homes, and respectfully, like people were saying, do not change the health of your community. And if you as a board refuse to listen, refuse to read through these materials that you've been presented, that's a form of gaslighting and bullying. And normally I represent Michigan for Vaccine Choice, and vaccine injury is a real thing. But the patients, the people that have suffered vaccine injury are often, the mothers are told and the patients are told, oh, that didn't happen to you, that didn't happen. Your child wasn't fine and then not fine after a vaccine. It's the same thing. You're gonna choose to ignore data and information that you were given, and that would be a wrong moral choice for you to do that, okay? So I would urge you, what's the end date for, when are you gonna be finished with this issue? When are you gonna say resoundingly that, no, we will not have any more wind turbine activity built in your township? When's the end date? I'm wondering. Or does this go on and on and on and on and on and on and on until Apex just rolls up and leaves? They just leave you and your neighbors to deal with each other when your neighbors are telling you that they don't want this and you've chosen to not listen to them? Apex is gonna leave. You're gonna have to live with these people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, I think?
Yeah, I'd like to comment, actually, first with the tribunal and Gretchen on the 3 million. I gave you guys a copy of that article, I think a couple months ago. I'm sure it's in the stack. And that was the conclusion of it. They have to pay back the 3 million, whether it's over however many period, how much time, it's gotta be paid back out of the 57 million, 2 million a year over that 20 years. It's a year and a half's payments of earnings from these turbines. Kim, if it wasn't for you kinda making sure Albert gets his extra time, I had no interest in calling you out, but I mean, Kim Carr, you are married to Pat Carr. Pat Carr is looking at getting millions off of this project.
He is not, you have misinformation, I'm sorry.
No, that's how it sounds. You're looking at $1 million over your 55 years of the lease for every turbine you get. You've already received thousands.
Let's not personally attack people, please.
It's a board member, this is the government, it's nothing personal, but you are an authority, and you don't have to answer the question, but this is my public comment, and I can give it how I choose, and you should really double check the Open Meetings Act before lawsuits start getting thrown around. This is my time to comment, how I choose.
Chairman, thanks.
Are you cutting me off, or?
We set some ground rules at the beginning, and I think most of you respect those, and I appreciate that. I mean, this is Cato Township.
I don't see how that's a I'm not trying to attack you. If there's something I'm saying that's wrong, if you haven't received more than $1,000, or if Pat hasn't received more than $1,000, then correct me. And you are looking at millions, with this project. Otherwise, you wouldn't have leased. But it's an obvious conflict of interest. You should step down. You don't have to. If it was a good project, you could step down and it would pass without your vote. But obviously, you need it.
Thank you. Oh, yep, I'm sorry.
Okay, Lynn Bowen, Cato Township.
Lynn Bowen?
Yep, and I didn't wanna say anything at first because I didn't have anything to, object to, I guess. But, after Kelly got up and talked about the schools receiving money, I felt like I had to finally say something because 10 years ago, I've said this before and I feel like a broken record, but 10 years ago, my mom was, a trustee, just like you guys, but for Maple Valley. And she learned as much as she could. She did a ton of research. You guys know my mom, Carol Peterson. So it was determined 10 years ago that this county was not a viable county for wind. and it's documented somewhere, and we're doing everything we can to find that document, as every township member or trustee was a part of that meeting 10 years ago, along with Judy Owens, who was the state representative at that time. We're doing our best to try and find that information to get that to you, so you guys have that too. I don't know what all the reasons were, she's told me, but I don't remember it. I don't know all the facts that Albert has regarding a $3 million, but I started paying attention 10 years ago when it was determined that this wasn't a good county, and apparently Gratiot County was. I have friends that live in Breckenridge, involved in the school system and involved in the fire department. The school system never saw a penny of that money that they were promised 10 years ago in Breckenridge. Okay, they had 100 at the time, I think, planned to go on 100 turbines to go in at 358 feet or something. So they're just like us, families that lived in a farm community that thought they were gonna get all this money based on a few people saying, you know, this is what it's gonna bring us, this is what it's gonna bring us. The fire chief of that community, was also one that received the benefit of a wind turbine or more, and convinced others in the community that this was gonna bring in all this money. They got a new fire truck, they pretended it was all because of the wind community money coming in, community, we're funding your community, when in fact, research was done, and it was a $25,000 grant that came from the state. But there's all this misconception and corruption that's happening to people like us that grew up in this community, and it's happening behind our backs and so underhanded in some cases, and it just doesn't feel right. It's not transparent. The ordinances are gonna be what saves us, so to speak, so that the people that I feel like get bamboozled in Gratiot County, maybe we can learn from that somehow. And I also know that they were told there were gonna be 200. You know, we have this community project of 75 wind turbines. They were told 200, they now have 507 turbines in that county. That was as of March 17th. I'm sure there's more. I've seen more Met towers go up. I drive that way to work every day. I work in Flint. I drive by them every day and I watch the towers go up. I watch and see which ones are spinning, which ones aren't spinning. It seems like from when they're not spinning, I think about the biggest waste of government funds and people, communities that have been torn apart like we are. It's not even worth it. I just hope the ordinance can save us.
Thanks, Lynn. Yes,
Yeah, I'm Chris Stout, Cato Township, and I got 120 acres south of town. And, my family settled that in the mid-1800s. They got the original land grant from the government yet. And, I don't wanna see no flicker on my land. None. My kids wanna build a house on the back 40 and the 40 next to it. They're not gonna want a windmill there. And if they build a windmill there, they ain't gonna wanna build a house there. Are you gonna pay me for my land and what I could've made off it? Because you allow windmills to go in on my property surrounding mine? And what's it gonna do to the wildlife hunting out there? Deer hunting is just fabulous out there. You put them up, the deer are gonna run for the hills. And Macomb County is one of the best deer hunting spots around. And if you allow these to go in, it won't be.
anything else, Chris?
Nope.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sir, did you want to say something? I thought you raised your hand, no?
Can I be indulged? Pete, just can I be indulged for just 1 second?
And you want to make another comment, public comments?
it
Okay,
is-
Just a yes or no?
Yes, it is a public comment.
Cause if I make, well, you,
It's
then
not,
it's
it's
gonna
not a
be,
public comment then, it's more of a, my name is Patricia. Definition, patience, those that know me, that's a lie. Second is peacemaker, which I tried my entire life. I've known half this board for over 46 years. And I wanna say that you guys will make a good proposal ordinance here. You have my faith in you. I think you're fair, I think you're just, and I honestly think you're gonna do the best for Cato Township. That's all I wanna say.
thanks, Patricia. Anybody else, I guess? Okay, so I'm gonna close public comments. Thank you.
I will say that, some of the comments that some of you made tonight, only if you're at all of our meetings, you would understand where we're at with some of the things, if you will, that you talked about, because some of the things that you bring up, we've already talked about and made some proposals, if you will, of some of that, so, makes it frustrating for us as a commission, and we're not trustees, just so y'all know. We're not board members, just so you know. We're just a commission of a planning commission in Cato Township. The board meets at a different time, those are trustees on the board, if you will. So, I'm not sure if you all understand that whole process of who, what, where, when, if you will, but, yeah. And we're looking at the ordinance, and obviously we're going through that line by line, because Cato Township does have an ordinance, and, we're looking at, revamping that whole process, if you will, and it's taking some time. Do we have a deadline? No, we don't have a deadline, people. We don't have a deadline at all. We're taking our time to make sure that we do it and do it right, Cato Township, members, if you will, as far as within the community, so. With that said, we're gonna move on to Dave Kelsey when it comes to permits. Dave, if you can go through those real quick.
Okay, I gave you my copy. For the month of June, there were 5 permits. One was, or 2 were for pole barn, 1 was for a home, and 1 for an Amish school, and 1 dwelling. Okay, and then, month of August, there was 1 home permit, and that's all.
That's it for the township. Thank you, Dave.
Bill, I have a couple things before you, whenever you want me to say it, it's fine, but I do wanna address a couple things before we get into the ordinance. Anybody else, is that giving him a migraine?
The flicker?
Yeah, go ahead.
Better hope you don't get no
I did
flowers.
give a couple things, it's in your packet material, but our moratorium on, wind energy, turbine applications, is due to expire here, I think November 3rd. And, I drafted up some language that I would like to get this commission's approval on, to pass along to the board, so that at their next meeting, they can extend the moratorium for another 6 months, based on where we're at, in reviewing this ordinance. So, I wanted to get that out there. And then, also, I've had a lot of people asking about solar, and I'm a little, confused on what we have for a solar ordinance, because it's not in our zoning book, it's not on the website. I have meetings, meeting minutes from the board from last June that says an ordinance was approved. I don't know if there was a public hearing, I don't know if it was published in the paper, but, we need to figure that out, because people are coming to me and saying they're hearing of leases being signed for solar, and we certainly don't want, any future non-conforming, projects going in if we are going to be reviewing what we have for solar. So I also did, up some paperwork to put a, year-long moratorium on solar, because none of us are gonna be looking at that until this wind, ordinance is reviewed. So those were two things. The other, I guess you can call it a housekeeping item, I knew it was gonna come up tonight, just from, if you follow the daily news, there's been 6 articles in the past, since our last meeting, about the topic of conflict of interest. The Planning Enabling Act, does require us to define it in our bylaws. We are required to do that. I'll just read the couple sentences out of the Planning Enabling Act so everybody's clear. Before casting a vote on a matter on which a member may reasonably be considered to have a conflict of interest, the member shall disclose the potential conflict to the Planning Commission. The member is disqualified from voting on the matter if so provided by the bylaws or by a majority vote of the remaining members of the Planning Commission. Thank you. Unless the legislative body by ordinance defines conflict of interest for purposes of the subsection, the Planning Commission shall do so in its bylaws. I, as a commissioner, I wanna know what the definition is. Maybe I have a conflict. I will say for the record, I have not signed a lease. None of my close relatives have signed a lease, and we do not plan to. But I do wanna be in compliance with the Planning Enabling Act, because if I'm serving on a commission, nobody's gonna be coming back and saying I didn't, follow the rules. So we need to do that, and, I have been looking at other townships, how they define it. Again, as public officials, anytime you're making decisions on behalf of the public, there's an expectation that you're not gonna benefit financially from it. Now it gets a little hairy when everybody lives in the same township. I think there's probably a facts and circumstances that needs to be looked through, how many people are gonna benefit financially from it, how much is it? There's definitely gonna be some facts and circumstances, but we need to be in compliance. That's all I wanna say.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about the moratoriums, if you will.
Yep.
Let's have some discussion on that, I guess. We think we need to extend that.
The wind moratorium? I do,
We're even close to finishing this,
Right.
I agree.
Dave?
I agree.
Okay. So, we have a motion, I guess, then for you, Dave, to, take that to the, get your next, meeting, which is what, next week? Yeah.
I'll make a motion to present, you guys have all had copies of this, nothing, no surprises here.
6 months, is that what
Yeah.
6 months.
Support good? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So, Dave, if you can, make that happen then at your next meeting?
We're doing the solar?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so that'll be our next order of business as far as when it comes to
I
solar.
think what Randy's saying is we need to find what the ordinance is that is referenced, and then we need to review it, like what we're doing here.
I did reach out to Jordan Lindsay quite some time ago, and he did forward me a Word document that said solar ordinance, that's how I knew to look in June. But again, it wasn't in our planning book, and it's not on the website, and, I don't know, it was during COVID, last June, who knows, I guess, he told me we had one, so that's why I started there.
Dave, can you answer that?
I'm sorry, what was the question on it?
Solar ordinance?
I'm looking it up right now.
What the minutes say is Lindsay presented from the Planning Commission a solar energy ordinance. Motion was made by Lindsay to adopt and add solar energy system, section 3.41, to Cato Township ordinance book, supported by Lincoln, all in favor, carried. So
What is the date of that meeting?
that was June 22nd, 2020, and it said it came from the planning commission.
Okay. So I'll get that and use for the future
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, right here I have, something on amendment to the solar energy system. Is that what you're talking about, or is that something?
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's called section 3.41.
It's, 62-A I have in there, but that's on my book is, and it says 3.41, section 3.41.
4.1 or 4.1?
3.41. 3.40 is wind, or was, or is until, it still is, I guess.
Yes.
Revised.
If it was an amendment, there should have been a public hearing on it before it went to the board. They should have published it in the newspaper after the board approved it, so it seems like there should be a paper trail here.
Okay, now I don't have a signature on this here, so 8 yeas and nays, it's just, blank where there should be signatures.
And that's, yeah, what the board,
Probably
that's
what
what
I
I,
talked about, referred to. So, I'm gonna say, Dave, you take that to the board too?
Asking about the solar and
Yeah.
we wanna do a 1 year, if we have one, do a 1 year moratorium on it because we know we're gonna have at least 6 months.
We know as a commission, we need to look at that, and we're gonna,
we need support for that, cause I'll support it.
yeah,
Make a motion.
Dave,
Oh, I thought they were, whatever, somebody can, I second it.
all support? Yes,
Yes.
so carried. And if you go back, have them look in the minutes to
Your June,
June 22nd,
of 2020.
yes.
And Kelsey, you probably have what they talked about, is my guess, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
When they
and
talked
what
about
was,
it?
but, yeah, it
Yeah.
was turned over the board, the wording,
Right.
but it was, I
Yeah.
don't know where.
Probably what they referred to, and then
When was the date that was?
6/22 of 2020? 6/22, right, Randy?
Yes, 6/22. Yeah, it doesn't say the
Thank you.
location, Jim. Could be, I don't know.
before I was on there.
So you're good on those two then?
6 month moratorium for wind and 1 year for solar, and then do we have one? And then it says,
Right. And then I think in your packet of, Randy was referring to some stuff that was in your packet, there's also some stuff in there about, decommissioning. A couple different articles, if you will. And then also, I think there's a map also in there. That map is on the board in the back of the room there, a couple of them, if you will. And basically, what that refers to is Cato Township. If you see the striped, red kind of diagonal marks on that map, that's the proposed land that, is, not being considered when it comes to, what do I wanna say, it's outside the boundary as far as when it comes to wind turbines. So, none of that in Cato Township, some of that's due because of the, I'm gonna say the airport, if you will, and then just some normal setbacks. So, I don't know if you've seen that before or not?
They submitted it, did this come from Apex?
Yeah.
They submitted it, probably, one of my first meetings,
Yeah.
May or June, they
I don't
submitted this
think-
map.
Yeah, I don't know if the public understands that whole piece, I guess, if you will, so, which I think is beneficial when it comes to that, so. There's some other stuff on there too when it comes to, environmental setbacks and house setbacks and so on and so forth. And then maybe some suitable area if, we have turbines and what that looks like as far as when it comes to just Cato. So, just something for you to look at and consider. And I think in your email, I think when Jamie spoke earlier today, this evening, in your email, Brandy forwarded, I think, a copy of this whole piece here, if you will. So, I mean, it's a long, I mean, I took a look at some of it, I didn't read the whole thing yet, but, I mean, it's quite talking about, that subject when it comes to kind of the medical, if you will, and health and welfare. So, you should have that in your email as far as it comes to. Anything else?
I guess would you like me to come back with some items for the bylaws, examples of how others have done it to get us in compliance?
You're talking about planning and enabling?
The planning and enabling act.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, we gotta come up with a definition.
Yeah.
We can't just make it up.
I think we have a very diverse commission, I will tell you. I think we, as you sit back and look at it and dissect it, I think I guess I'll say the same word, we're very diverse. I mean,
Oh, I agree.
you know, we have people that, I think are on all sides of the fence. So, as a chair, it doesn't concern myself at this point. I think we've been very open and speaking of our minds when it comes to where we're at, when it comes to the window as it is today, when we're all the way through page, almost 56. Moving on to safety and decommissioning, if you will. So, I mean, I think we've done pretty good when it comes to that whole piece there, so. I think anybody in the community is gonna have a voice of concern, whether it be positive or negative. You know, it's our duty, it's our job as a commission to consider what the comments have been, and that's why I did it a little bit different tonight when it comes to Cato Township, because those are the people I really want to hear from. Not that we, can't hear from the rest of them, but those are the people that live here, those are the people that are our neighbors, and, that we see and talk with and communicate with. So, I think, we've been very professional, very cordial, very, had some good conversation when it comes around that whole piece, I believe. So, is it on my mind? Has it been on my mind? Yeah. But I think we've been very open and very honest, I think, when it comes to that whole piece, so.
Yeah, and I wanna keep moving forward, I wanna keep moving the ball forward, when people, bring it up to me, I wanna say, hey, we complied, our bylaws define it, we, considered it.
So, will we, if we have turbines, will certain people, benefit in our community when it comes to that? Sure, I'm sure they will. Will we all benefit for that as a community if, we do have them? My belief is we will, based on the monies that come in from that. Is there detriment to that too? Yeah, I'm sure there is. But we haven't come to a conclusion as a commission yet to even give to the board to consider where we want to go with that whole thing. And we still have a lot of work to do as far as I'm concerned. Really,
Oh,
really
yeah,
do. So,
for sure, that's why we need a moratorium extended.
so, but I think we've all been very honest and open, and we've all communicated, and, so.
I totally agree with you, I just know it's an issue, hot topic, and I don't wanna be on the hot seat as it pertains to that topic, because we're making progress.
Yeah, there's a lot of hot topics out there. Even when it comes to shadow flicker, if only the people were here to listen to that, what we talked about is not having any shadow flicker. And there's still people talking about that in our meeting tonight. There's technology out there when it comes to shutting off those lights. That's a well-known fact out there, and it's out there on some of those turbines today being tested, and it is my belief, we will have that obviously in our ordinance when it comes to that, so we don't have to deal with the lights flashing on and off. And there's technology that will turn them on when they detect, activity. And that's a pretty you know, that's the technology that we have today, which is pretty cool, so, but, so, I mean, I think our ordinance will lean that way when it comes to different things, when it comes to the safety and welfare, when it comes to our community, when it comes to Cato Township, so. Any discussion around that, I guess, before I, no,
I'll still email you a few samples
Yeah.
just for consideration.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna go do some research into it too, so, but I'm not the expert, and I guess that leads to the next thing here. I mean, obviously, we as individuals, I mean, we listen to people, we get information from people. You can research on the internet, and, you know, what's the truth, what's not the truth, I don't know. That becomes very frustrating to a point, because when you think it's the truth, and it isn't the truth, or maybe it is the truth, you don't know which way to believe or go when it comes to that, and that's, you know, I guess the technology piece in today's world, so. And it's my belief that we gotta have some professional,
Guidance.
yeah. I believe we do,
Independent third party.
some legal advice. So,
Well, I would like to, make a recommendation that David take that request to the township board, that we, seek some legal guidance. I know that there are several townships that are already doing that, and I feel like we are not being good stewards of our township and our county's monies by, winging it. None of us here at this table or in this room are experts in wind, except for maybe Albert, and, I'm just saying that why would we take that responsibility to not seek guidance when it's available? I feel like it's irresponsible of our commission to proceed without some legal guidance. And third party, I'm not saying a pro-wind, I'm not saying an anti-wind, I'm saying somebody who is an expert in the subject that can provide us good direction for our community.
and I know we talked about that, I guess, let's talk about that as a group a little bit. We know that they did the budget for that, right, Dave?
Mhm.
And they set some funds aside for that.
Yes.
But what I don't know is where they're at with that.
Yeah, cause when I talked to the last meeting before last, Todd was gonna get a hold of some, and then when I called him last week, so I knew for this meeting, we have to approve, who we wanna get, and he was gonna get some names. And as far as I know, we're gonna discuss that on